Good morning. Hemshah Ayin Beis, Volume 3. We finished the bottom of page 1397, and we are now on the top of page 1398. To summarize briefly what we're learning, this all began with a discussion of the three examples for Makabel, which is the worlds of Bria, Yetzirah, Asiya, Talmud, Mishnah, and Mikra. So on bottom of page 1364, the Rebbe Rashab said, that there are three levels in how Malchus, which is a Makabel, draws the energy from the sun, from the Mashpia, I should say, from Zoh, from Atzilus, and these three correspond to the three worlds of Bri, Yetzirah, and Asiya. Yeah. And that's the difference between the moon, a luminous stone, and the vision of the eye. And there he said also, V'nod seifim b'tchilosan, that in Malchus of Asiya, there's a reflection that's higher than even Malchus of Bria. And the Rebbe Rashab explained the difference between Levant, these three different examples, the moon, stone, and vision. And then he said, to understand this, let's begin Al Pi Agdama, an introduction to what the difference between Mikra, Mishnah, Talmud, that Talmud is in Bria, Mishnah is in Yetzirah, and Mikra is in Asiya. And that began the long discussion of these three different types in Torah itself. Now, all this was coming to explain, remember the second form of our Remimcha Lekaya Melech, to draw down from Remamus, from transcendence into existence, from the top down through Torah. After 550 pages explaining how it is through from bottom up Tefilah, prayer, he began on 1390, page 1390, to explain how it's through Torah. So obviously it makes sense that Torah manifests in these three levels, because it's the Torah that would bring the divine energy from the highest levels all the way down into the mind of a human being on earth. So that went a long explanation of the difference between Mikra, Mishnah, Talmud. Then, on page 1386, the Rebbe Rashab went back, after explaining it at length, the difference between the three, where Mikra originates in the highest level because it's Chachmei Law, it's the written Torah, the words, the exact words that God said to Moshe. Mishnah, that's Chabad of Atzilus, and that descends all the way into Asiya, into the simple stories and the brief mitzvahs without explanation in the written Torah. That then goes into Mishnah, which is Chagas of Atzilus, second level, Midas, which clarifies the verses. But now we still have the clarity because the Mikra, the Chachmei Law, is radiating in Chachmei Tata of Mishnah. And that was passed on generation to generation all the way to Rabbeinu HaKadosh, who codified it and compiled it in the Mishnah. And then comes the next generation where that became concealed, and now we needed the effort, the exertion and the effort of the sages of the Talmud to find in the dark, to find that clarity. And that's Talmud, that originates in Nehi and ends up in Bria. And he explained, because Bria is the world of darkness. The world of darkness, it's not clear, and that's why you need the light of the moon, which comes from that exertion and effort to go all the way back to the source, to draw from the superconscious to get that clarity. Mishnah, on the other hand, has a clarity on its own, like the bright stone. It doesn't need that effort in the dark. It's already a luminous stone that channels, that assumes the properties of the sun that he explained. And that's Mishnah, that's Yetzirah. we will go back to Asiya where she's not up to yet. But that's the flow of the whole discussion here. Now, it's very clear that on one hand, Bria is higher than Yetzirah. But on the other hand, the concept of Gilui, there's an advantage to Gilui that Bria doesn't have. So even though the Talmud does have an ability, because they have to exert themselves to reach back to the source, but Yetzirah has the melt of Gilui. The only thing is the Rebbe Rashab did not spell it out in the context of Mishnah. We have to, I'm the one that's interpreting it that. He doesn't say it explicitly, but it's clearly that's where he's coming from. That's the flow of the ideas that we've been discussing here. So in this discussion that Yetzirah Gilui is higher in a certain way, it has a Maila, Yesera, has a quality that's superior to Bria, Helam. So he's been discussing it in many different ways, and that's the Tachas HaKavanah. It should be revealed. So to move it forward, he spoke about Chem Yetzirah Tikkun, Bria Yetzirah Asiya, and then brought it all the way to where we are, that there's also the two levels of Kodesh and Baruch, which is, again, Kodesh is higher than Baruch, but Baruch is Gili. Kodesh is removed. Kodesh is the Seraphim that acts as the Ayin of Keser, like Talmud accesses the Ayin, but it's concealed. It's still removed. Whereas in Yetzirah, Baruch brings it into a revealed state. So it's a lower level, but it has a quality that revelation has that concealment doesn't have. And that led us into, on page 1396 and 1397, that he brings from Eitz Chaim now the two levels of Chsadim. There's Chsadim, higher Chsadim that are concealed till the chest, and then there's the Chsadim that are revealed. So even though the higher ones are higher, but they're concealed, and there's something about revealing that happens only in the lower level. And to explain that, he said that's the difference between Eitz Hadas. Eitz HaChaim is the higher level that's concealed. Eitz Hadas is the lower level that's revealed. To understand that, he went into in Yadua, Eitz Chaim, the difference between the Kav Chut, the imminent energy of Er Pnimi, that is Gilui and revealed in each respective stage of existence, and Er Makiv, that's an equalizer, but it's concealed, it's an equalizer. And there, that's higher than Pnimi. It's higher than Pnimi, and there's no Milo Mata, and that's why Allah says, Love, when there will no longer be, when there'll be, like he says, it'll be Yem Shekulei Shabbos, because we'll be getting the order of the Makiv, which is an equalizer. It doesn't have the Aliyah and Yurid. There's the ascents and the descents, the ups and downs, the elevations and the descents associated with the Kav, as he explained. Now, I just want to add that this whole last section about the Kav Chut and Eitz HaChaim, Eitz Hadas, and what we're going to learn soon, next page, is all from the Tzemach Tzedek's Maimer. I found it in Biurei Azer of the Tzemach Tzedek, page 88 and 89. So there, it's a lot of it is the same language with some additional explanations, but the themes are really there. And when you see it there, you can see more context of this whole topic. So, bottom line is the same idea that even though Makiv is higher than Pnimi, and the Makiv is higher than the Kav, but nevertheless, the Kav is about Gili, which is so critical because you want to have Dira B'Tachteinim in a structured existence, and for structure, you need Gili. So if I would apply this to Talmud and Mishnah, I would say Talmud is an elaboration of the Mishnah, but Talmud's focus is getting clarity where there's no clarity, darkness. And in the process, yes, we get a lot of details. Mishnah is a clarity that's there initially. It's more of a Gili. Talmud is finding Gili even in a dark state. So in that sense, Talmud has a quality because it's finding that clarity, but it's through darkness, through questions and contradictions and so on. And Mishnah is the Gili itself, which is the quality that he's trying to address here. So the truth is you need both. And that's what, as we're going to learn the next page, that we need both. But regardless, in the context of Mishnah and Talmud, Mishnah would be the Gili, like the Kav more, and Talmud would be more the Gili, the Helam, that which comes through the Helam. So even though there is an element of Talmud that reveals, but its focus is much more, compared to Mishnah, its focus is to get rid of the concealments the things that are unclear. And in the process, a lot is revealed. But initially, it's a state of bria and a state of concealment. And it requires that effort to achieve the clarity that the Bali Mishnah have initially from the outset. Okay. So one more thing I said I would explain, just because it's the issue of loss of love in not having hierarchy, that there won't be Milo Mata, and that's why Yom Shekule Shabbos and Menucha, the Aliyah and Yeridus. So I asked the question, what do you mean? We find loss of love will also be Aliyah and Yeridus. And even in Makiv, there's higher and lower. And also, even when we say Lo Yalamdo Eidish Esre'eu, V'kikulim Yedu Esi, that everybody will know Esi, God, it says Miktanim Ad G'delam, from young to old. So how do you reconcile structure and non-structure? So what I said briefly on Friday, and I'll just a bit more elaborate a bit more, to remember like this: from our perspective, structure and non-structure are contradictions, or at least two different levels. When you talk about a structure of like higher and lower distinction, that's the world of the Kav. That's the world of hierarchy, of distinctions, of levels, stages, and so on. The world of Makiv is an equalizer. It's a chayes klali, like he said, or ratzon. It equalizes. But from God's point of view, there's only one God. He created the structure. We can't say that God, in some way, breaks down into details. He has the power to create details, but he himself always remains Hashem Echad. He always retains the unity of the divine is always there. So how do we explain from God's perspective the idea of multiplicity or duality, for that matter? That there are many things. Or another way of putting it, Chassidus asked the question, how does from one come many? We don't have that question with us because we're not integrally one. We're created existence, and we are ourselves made up of fragments, of pieces. We're murkovim, we're made up of parts, but God is pashut, betachlis hapshitus, shapeless, seamless, and so on. So the answer is because God has a koyach hagvul. Like the Vedas HaKadosh says, just like he has the power to create the infinite, he has the power to create the finite. And he's not closer to the infinite than he is to the finite. It's two forces. So God is really beyond oneness and beyond diversity. And he can create both. The thing is that God sees it that way. We don't see it that way. When we see one or pieces, we see parts, a composite, and then we see and then we see unity. But the goal is to join the two together. That these two tracks that God created, his unified energy, Oir Ein Sof, like Makif, the equalizer, should become one, like it is by him, with God as he creates the many. And that's our Aveda, doing our Aveda with every detail of this world. Like I always point out, Asher Kedeshanu b'mitzvaysu v'tzvanu, lahadlik ner Shabbos Kodesh, or alatifas talis, or lachilas matzah. We're taking the matzah, shahakal nibid, we're taking the water, we're taking the fruit, or whatever the bracha is, or whatever the mitzvah is. And what are we doing? We're connecting it to Asher Kedeshanu, the equalizer that sanctifies all of us, all mitzvahs. Or Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam. We're connecting Elokai Melech to Ara Mimcha. That's the interface of Ayin Beis, of theme of Ayin Beis, Chassidus. To take the details of existence and not eliminate them, but show how they're all part of one mosaic, of one larger unity. Now, for God, God created both tracks, but he gave us the Aveda to show and demonstrate it from the bottom up, or from the top down for that matter, through our Aveda, whether it's Torah, Tefilah, whatever the work is, to take the details of existence, the fragments of existence, and show and put them all together. That's Avedas HaBirurim. What's Birurim? Shviras HaKelim shattered the containers. It like tore up the pages. It scattered all the musical notes. And our job is to gather them together, realign them, and show how the entire universe, every corner of it, every fiber of existence, that the Kav creates is permeated with that unifying divine energy called Makif. So when the Asad Labe will come, what will be the difference will be, there'll still be a structured existence, but the integral unity will be shining everywhere. So there'll be details, but the details won't be so significant as they are now. Now, it's all about details. And it's all about ups and downs and aliyahs, yuridus, Shabbos, Yom Tov, like he said, weekdays. L'asad Labe, you'll also have that, but then the Achdus Hashem, that he will be one, his name will be one. The oneness will permeate, so you'll see everything like one organism, one reality. And even the details will be seen as the koyach hagvul of the Eibishter. It's simply God's infinite power to create one finite piece of art. That's still part of his infinite possibilities. It's just from the bottom up, it appears defined. And it is defined. But when you come to a point where you come to recognize the divine unifying energy, then that creates a whole new type of seamlessness. So the idea, what he calls here, Shabbos and Menucha, will dominate. And the concept of Aliyas and Yuridus, even though there'll be structure, but that will not be the key thing, is this type of what he called here, the Shinui, the Milo Mata with Shaykh Aliyas. It'll be focused on the Achdus. And that's why it's not a contradiction. You have a structured existence, but the structured existence is all parts of one larger unity. That's the key thing to keep in mind. The Makif of the Eagle Agol, Kulam B'Shabbos. Today is Behelam, and La'asid, it will radiate in a revealed way, this Makif. Okay. So now, the Rebbe Rashab is going to go back to the Biuri Azeh that I cited before, and now with this he's going to explain, as the Tzemach Tzedek does, the difference between Eitz HaChaim and Eitz HaDas in Avodah, which will come back to explain the difference between the concealed and the revealed. Now that we've learned this, there's a concealed and the revealed. Okay. So I'm going to start reading from the top of page 1398. But in case anybody wants to ask something about anything I've said, I'm happy to answer. But I think some things will become a little clearer in this next paragraph, where he ties it all together. The only thing I'd add is one more thing. Comes when I looked in the Biuri Azeh of Tzemach Tzedek, for some reason I had an epiphany. I've said this many times, but now I just have it even clearer to my mind, that the Rebbe Rashab literally going out of his way to connect every possible Maimon Chassidus in Ayin Beis. He's bringing everything he can bring together. So at the end of the day, we talk about Achdus in details. He's bringing it, like creating a comprehensive, like Rambam style, where everything Chassidus is coming together and connecting it all in this Hemshech Ayin Beis. And if you go back from the beginning of Ayin Beis, you could really see that. I mean, I've tried to indicate and mark up in my Ayin Beis as many of my Morim I was able to find, but it's more than just quoting from them. He's actually connecting them all. So in a way, all of Chassidus, from the Alter Rebbe, the Mittler Rebbe, Tzemach Tzedek, and the Rebbe Marash, the Rebbe Rashab's father, all four of them, all their Maimorim, on some way in Ayin Beis being brought together in one big hemshech, similar to what the Rambam did. That the Rambam says he took everything from Torah Shebiksav, the written Torah, and Torah Shebapeh till his time, and put it in one book that you don't need any other book. The Rebbe Rashab didn't say those words. And I can't say he took every Maimer Mamish. I'm sure there's some things he didn't, which I have to really do a little more research on. But a lot. There's more than one could even believe how much. When you start really looking, you see that he put Maimorim from all over and in some way built it into this one, weaved it together into this beautiful tapestry. Okay, before I continue, does anyone have any questions? Okay, so let's read top of page 1398. And the pages can be found at ayinbeis.com. V'hinei, and now that we've learned about the difference between Kav and Igul and Makif. And as I said, this is the Tzemach Tzedek structure. First, I thought it was the Rebbe Rashad, but it's actually the Tzemach Tzedek structure. It says, V'hine b'chines Eitz HaChaim. Remember on page 1396, he said, Eitz HaChaim is Chsadim Uchusim, the concealed chsad, the higher level of chesed. Eitz Hadas is the lower level of chesed revealed. So he says now, V'hine b'chines Eitz HaChaim hu b'chines Yesod Abba. It's the level of Yesod Abba, the bonding of Chachma. You said that already before. If you look at the bottom of, closer to the bottom, he said, Eitz HaChaim b'chines Yesod Abba anikre Chayuhi. Chaim, he said, so this is the level of Yesod Abba, of Chachma, of Atzilus, Shehu b'chines HaBittel. This is a level of Bittel, because we know Abba Chachma Koyach Ma is Bittel. Ki Chachma Koyach Ma, Chachma is the letters, the words Koyach Ma, the power of what? Ma is Bittel. Hainu Levatel B'Hamakif. Chachma, even though it's the first of the spheres, but Chachma is only a spark. It stands in a type of nullification, sublimated and absorbed. Levatel B'Hamakif. Chachma senses that unifying element. That's why it's only a spark. It doesn't break into details yet. Bina will break it into details. But Chachma itself is a state that feels the ayin of Keser. That everything before him is nullified, is like kiloi. And so too is the bitl of Chachma, that level. I mentioned last time, I mentioned many times. There he says, Shemaiti Mimori, I heard from my teacher, the Alter Rebbe writes, that a Chachma radiates, Hu levade vein zulose. Chachma feels and senses he alone and nothing else. So Chachma's power, the most powerful thing that dominates a Chachma is not wisdom, not understanding. It's a recognition of a higher reality, as we've learned. It's still a Reishis HaGilui, like we learned as well. It comes into some form of Gilui. But there's another side of Chachma that connects to that which is beyond. And I'll clarify that as we learn, because we learn that Chachma is Baruch, and Keser is Kodesh. But yet, Chachma has something in it, especially when you compare it to Bina and the lower levels, that senses this higher reality. Being that Chachma is the first creation, like Bria, Ayin the Keser, the first entity, I say creation, the first emerging entity that emerges and was shaped from the Ayin of Keser, Meir Ba Gili Ayin. So that ayin radiates within it. So Chachma has within it a bitl of Keser, not quite like Keser, because we learn Keser is even higher. It's Fs, completely beyond knowing anything. Here it's not necessarily completely beyond, but it's enough to be an equalizer. And when you stand in that state of bitl, you don't recognize you don't identify as an individual. It's like someone in awe of something greater than they are, so they lose themselves and get absorbed in that higher reality. That's Chachma. Similar to Elam Habriya, so Yesh Harishin. It's not Elam Habriya Mamish because Chachma is in Atzilus, but Elam Habriya is also the first creation after what? Hayesh Harishin Shenivra Ma'ayin Aleki. The first yesh that shines of the ayin aleki of Atzilus. Harimeir sham gilia ayin. In Bria radiates the gilia ayin. That's why it's very amorphous, very like a raw, unshaped entity. The einu b'chinis yashem etzias. It doesn't yet have shape and form, as we learned explicitly. I'll refer it back to you. He said this right here. Bottom of page 1387. So that's the level of the ayin of Chachma. So similar it is the Chachma, the level of Chachma, b'chinas habitl the Keser, is the bitl of Keser. So there's that commonality between Bria here and Chachma. Now, what's the Chesed and Gvura that level? Is therefore concealed. Chesed and Gvura oz stumim u'mechusim b'yeseidim. Chesed and Gvura, because we're dealing with such a state of bittul, of absorption, the idea of an emotion being expressed in a revealed way is not there yet. Chesed and Gvura then is in a state of stumim, closed up, u'mechusim, and covered up, b'yeseidim, like we learned earlier in yeseidim, because Chachma is dominating here. So the midas that are going to be born from Bina, because they come from Bina, but they're still in a state of concealment. Because the bonding of Chachma is radiating then in the bonding of Bina, and therefore the midas cannot yet emerge. It's like, again, someone who's completely absorbed with something greater than they are, they can't even express emotions, because emotions is already a reflection of my experience. I'm feeling something. Here, I'm being absorbed, I'm being carried and being lifted up to something greater than me. Like we learned earlier, much earlier, about mutfa, murgish, and muskel, the difference between the mides, when they start feelings, but now we're talking about the feelings as they are encompassed in Bina, as it's affected by Chochmah, so the bittul makes them be concealed. They're nullified in the level of Chachma and Bina. When you're in such a state of absorption and connection, it's not shaykh then the revelation of Ava v'Yira. This actually is the exact language of the Tzemach Tzedek, the last 2-3 lines. The upper lines are the Rebbe Rashab's explanation of it. The Ava v'Yira, because Ava v'Yira, like we learned before about Medasalavi, hu b'chinas rotze v'shuv. Ava v'Yira means an attraction. Yira is a reverence. That's a rotze v'shuv, aliyah v'yirida. When you feel something, you're either drawn to it or you're revering it, like you stand from a distance, and that's aliyah v'yirida. V'achachmi b'chinas habitl la'oir hamakif she'en shayach by ma'ilo mata. But Chachma is standing in awe and standing in complete absorbed by the makif of Keser, where there's no ma'ilo mata. So the idea of Ava v'Yira, which connects to Rotze v'Shuv, a type of functional movement, you can basically, a rhythm of Rotze v'Shuv, because it's so that's why it's higher than the level of Ava, the level of Chachma. So it's all concealed and covered up. And that's what it means up till the chest. Because we're talking till the chest is still absorbed and concealed because it's connected to Bina and Chachma that is connected to something greater than the person. That's till the chest, like he said, said that at the beginning of the paragraph, the middle of page 1396. Any questions on this piece? Before I continue, he's going to now talk about the other level, the next level, the revealed level. Omnom, however, Lamata min hachazei, below the chest. Now we're moving down. Remember, we're not talking about physically, we're also talking about it metaphorically. She'ena me'er sham chinush yisei daba. There, Chachma is no longer radiating the bonding of Chachma, I should say. She'ena me'er sham chinush yisei daba. So sham hu gili hachesed gvura. Then Chesed and Gvura begin to emerge, they can become revealed for who is Galus Ava v'Yira. So now the emotions are beginning to emerge. When they're still in Bina, you could say they're like in the womb, or even early stages like in conception, where they're completely absorbed and consumed by something higher. Now they're beginning to emerge like a fetus that's beginning to develop. And that's the revelation of Ava V'yira. Because now there's still a bittul, but it's not a bittul to the makiv that's an equalizer. It's a bittul to the distinguisher called the Pnimi that defines levels. Kav, Shebah Kav. Shazel bittul Pnimi Shebah Kav. In the line. Yesh Ma'ilo Mato, Aliyah Virida. There's a hierarchy, there's higher and lower. Aliyah Virida, ascent and descent. And that's why here you could have the revelation of love, the desire that love has, that's attracted and wants to elevate. When you talk about Chochmah, it's in a state that is completely absorbed by the higher, and it's not like a separate entity that's looking to be absorbed. Here, you have an entity that is where there is Ma'ila Mata, and now there's an expression of feeling. I love. I'm not completely one with it. I love it. That's why I'm drawn to it. So there's Reitz Alales, and that is the level of Ava V'yira Gilui. And that's the second level. Okay. Again, any questions? Because now he's going to explain that we actually need both, which is really, I was waiting for this, because till now we're talking the mile of Gilui, and I had explained that we also need the mile of Helam, but he's going to actually spell it out right now, that you need both Bria and Yitzira and Bria, or in this case, revealed and concealed. No questions? Okay. Ube'emes, now in truth, Sarach Li is Beis Abchinas. This is also the Tzemach Tzedek. The truth is you need both levels, not just one or the other. Lies, Bchinas Gilia Ava V'yira. That you need both levels in order for there to be the revelation of Ava V'yira. You can't just rely on revelation. You also need the first concealed state. Shahare tzarich liyas ha'aveda da'ava v'yira b'izgalus. Because you need the aveda of the Ava V'yira. It's not enough to say you're a good Jew at heart, but you have to have it revealed. Shezeu shareitze be'emes l'davka b'yizbarach. That means a person has to truly want and desire to attach himself and cleave to God. Umiskarav lelikus, and to get close to godliness. B'bchinas gili er b'nafshe, in a state where you're consciously feeling in a very distinct and a very apparent way. B'nafshe, in his nefesh. Who? And that gili of Ava V'yira, not when it's concealed, but the gili, that love and reverence of God will bring him to exert himself in learning Torah, and performing mitzvahs, in a form that it vitalizes, an energy that's vitalized, that is an energy and a vitality, a divine energy and vitality. In other words, it's not something that's just there in a dormant or concealed way. It's living within the person, that they're feeling the passion of these emotions and therefore bringing them to real learning, Torah, and performance of mitzvahs. By contrast, the concealed or the closed up Ava V'yira, that's not a Gilia Pnimi. That's on a fundamental level, essentially somewhere within, there's that state. But it's not a Pnimi, it's not something that is internalized and integrated. that in a form that's Gili Er Mamish, that's a revealed Er Mamish, because it still remains somewhat beyond. That's why it's the level of Makif. The Gova my Losan, but the quality of the hidden love and awe and reverence is greater. Performance and mitzvahs, because in context of their divine power, not revealed, they have a quality that's greater than just action. Like he writes elsewhere at length, like the generation of the wilderness, the generation of Moshe Rabbeinu. So we know, they were a very enlightened generation called Deya, the knowledgeable generation. Deya, they had an awareness of God like no other generation did. The Deya means that they were from the world of thought. And they didn't want to involve themselves in actionable mitzvahs, which is going down a level. That's why the Meraglim didn't want to go into Israel. Because of on the contrary, because they felt in the midbar they were connecting to God that's beyond the structure of this world. They were connecting on a mind level, on a ava v'yira mechusim, completely connecting to higher levels. Why should they get involved in the structural elements of Maisa Mitzvahs? That's the quality. That's why they didn't want to go into the promised land, Eretz Yisrael. So even though that you could say, wow, that's a great level, but that's not the kavanah. Ava v'yira, having an actual love and reverence in a defined way, is tachlis hakdusha. That's the ultimate of kedusha, because that's what Hashem wants. In other words, it's not just enough to have the concealed; you need the revealed. You need both, because the first one is where it all originates from. He said clearly that you sharichlius beis. Elishanikra Eitzadas. But this level, once it's revealed, is called the tree of knowledge. Because once the midas start taking shape and form, and now there's an entity that feels, so even though that's the kavanah, not just to remain absorbed in the level of, you say, Abba Chachma, absorbed by the ayin, like he said before, in a state of concealed state, but now it's possible also, once it comes into defined form, there could be a nikas hachetzenim amidas. Eitz Hadas, we know what happened with Eitz Hadas. Ultimately, they ate from that tree of knowledge, and it brought not good things, because it's bringing it down in a tangible form. So the Meraglim wanted to stay in the midbar, because then they wouldn't have any challenges. But once you go into mitzvahs maisis, a material world, and you have to do actionable mitzvahs. So even though that's the kavanah, but we know there's challenges in this world. It would be much easier to remain in Gan Eden, or in this case, Ayin of Keser, or in the Midbar, removed from the mitzvahs maisis. So when you come down to fulfill the purpose, there are challenges. And the Unikas Achetzenim literally means that the negative energy can glean energy from you, because you're now immersing yourself in a world that's tangible and concrete. And like you said, midas that are midas. So when a person is in a state of chachma, completely absorbed, they can't really be a unikas achitzenim, because there's no room for anything. Here, it's me feeling ava v'yira. That can lead sometimes to even a certain form of, arrogance, yeshus, or other things, because you are now involved in the feeling and experiencing. So gilui is the kavanah, but it could also have potentially has a side effect here. And that's why he says you need both. That's why even though when you come now down below into the midas gluyim, not concealed. You still need afterwards, you need to reconnect to the tree of life. In other words, you can't just remain and say, okay, from Chochmah Bina, now I went into Midas. Now you have to connect. Now that you're experiencing love and reverence in a tangible and revealed way, now you have to permeate it with a bitl of the makif. To realize, like I said before, that in these details, it's still the divine unity that is beyond all the details. So it's true, we need to go into the details because that's where the purpose of existence is. We need the giluyim of the kav and all the levels we learned, all the levels for all the worlds and all the spheres and so on. But you need now to connect the details back to Eitz HaChaim, the bitl of the makiv, that's an equalizer.
Can you take a question?
1 minute. Yeah.
What you just said, the inyan of connecting the hischalkus, the details in or panimi, and chesed and gvura, etc., and midos, back to the makif or makif. That seems like, a rotzu, but I thought the tachlis of the kavana was to bring the makif to connect that which is above existence, reality, to bring Shem Havaya into Shem Elokim, into the lower worlds, which is a shuv.
The word Ratzeh V'Shuv that you're using now, he's not using that. He used Ratzeh V'Shuv here only in the world of Giluyim, which is Av V'Yira B'Gilui is Ratzeh
Okay, well,
V'Shuv.
so forget about Ratzeh V'Shuv.
What you're saying right now,
yeah.
What's that? Let's make it clear. He doesn't use Ratzeh V'Shuv the way you at all say
okay, so skip that. But still, the fundamental question is an elevation of hischalkus to Shem Havaya above, or is the Amshacha of Shem Havaya and Elokim? There was a lot of minor in Parshas Vayera that talk about this.
Why not both? Why not both?
That work. I guess that works.
Simple. He says, "Tzarich li yishneim." The emes tzarich li is beis abchinas. We need both because we need to bring it into the details, into Gilui, and we need to also have the bittul to the makif. So it begins actually. Remember, from the top down, it begins first with Chochmah, Bina, then it goes into Midas, and then you have to make sure, Achakach, he says, you have to make sure to elevate the Midas back to the level of Bittul of Makif. This is a theme that not all by Ayin Beis.
Correct.
As a matter of fact, the two ways of Elikai Melech was one is from the top down, one is from the bottom up. They're both legitimate. Bottom line is you need both. You need strength of both. That's the point.
Thank you.
V'nimtza, so to continue, v'nimtza. So what do we derive? What do we conclude from this? V'nimtza, ta'gam debchinas chesed u'gvura mechusim. That though chesed and gvura are the concealed ones, hem l'mayla harbe madrega are higher level in sheer firepower than revealed. Makom mokim yesh yisun mayla b'chesed u'gvura amagulim. Nevertheless, there's a quality and a value, an increased quality and value in revealed chesed and gvura, shem b'chinas hagilui, because they're coming into manifestation in a revealed way. As I've explained many times, the story with the Alter Rebbe, that just like a thief is not someone who could steal, but someone who steals, he said, a sage is not someone who could be a sage, but someone who is a sage. In this world, it's not enough to say I have potential, and I have the power, and I have be'etzem. The key is, Dira B'Tachtenim is not saying the world could become a home for God, but that the world becomes a home for God. It's not just enough, we could turn the world into a Mishkan, a Beis Hamikdash. We could bring Mashiach. The goal is to actually bring Mashiach and actually to reveal God. Not just that God could be revealed, but God should be revealed. So that's the Maila, B'Chesed Gvura Magul Shem B'Chinas Hagilui. And yet you also need to have the first, like he said, the connection. U'kamoi kain, and now he's concluding the whole Bria Yetzirah discussion. Kamoi kain u'b'chinas Bria v'Yetzirah. Same thing with Bria Yetzirah. Diyadua, ta'ascholas eitz hadas u'b'Yetzirah. The beginning of eitz hadas begins in the world of Yetzirah. Aval elam ha'bria u'b'chinas eitz hachayim adayim. The world of Bria is still eitz hachayim. V'hainu, this means the imei law makana b'kursaya, because the supernal mother, which is Bina, nests in the kursaya, in the kisei, in the throne, which is Bina, which is Bria, shemesh sham b'chinas habina, because in Bria, what radiates is Bina. And the midas are relatively concealed in Bina. It's Zoh that's Mekana no Yetzirah. In Yetzirah, you start getting the emergence of the midas. But in Bria, it's still concealed. So the same idea. Still like Eitz HaChaim. So it's a high level, but it's concealed. V'yadua mashakoseh be'Eitz Chaim, and it's known what it says in Eitz Chaim. The b'chinas Bina nasa b'chinas mosach l'gabe elam habriya. That Bina becomes like a curtain compared to elam habriya. I'm wondering why he says Yadua when he just said this, I believe, just a few pages back. That's what I'm thinking. Maybe the Rebbe Rashab wrote this a while after he wrote pages before, because he says it, if I recall correctly, I'm sure he said it right here. The Imam Mekanabel Kosaya, Shabin Nasbchis Masach Mislabish Bebriya. Yeah, he said it on page 1390. He also said it on page 1386. So this line is said several times. It says Yadua and doesn't make reference to earlier. So I'm just speculating that maybe the Rebbe Rashab wrote this a while later. Maybe not. Can't say for sure. Anyway, regardless, Bina becomes a curtain. That means it's concealed. L'gabe elam habriya, v'im kain b'chinas chesed gvura mechusim. And so the chesed and gvura that are concealed, the closed up chesed and gvura, eitz hachayim shabel maber ze gufu b'chinas kisei mosach. So the chesed and gvura mechusim of eitz chaim in elam habriya, that itself is in a state of a curtain of being covered and concealed and curtained up and shrouded. Mashenkin be'elam says adding, because he said that it's chesed gvura mechusim and atzilus in Yesod Bina. Bina is a mosach l'gabe elam habriya. So then when the midas come, when Bina comes into Bria, so the chesed gvura is all concealed there in a kisei mosach. Yeah, it's not just a curtain in atzilus compared to Bria. It's in the midas are in a concealed state. Mashenkin be'elam hayetzirah, the rag zoh mekan b'yetzirah. When it comes to Yetzirah, only Zoh of Atzilus, the Midas, nests in Yetzirah. Because Bina is primarily in Bria. Now it's already becoming more revealed. These are the Midas that pierce this curtain. Yesod Ima, like we said, you say the bonding of Ima, the Yetzin and Mizgalim. And they emerge and they get revealed. Because now we're talking about they're emerging from within the mother, within Bina, how the midas are within Bina. They're emerging. And after this, specifically this, has a quality and a virtue because it's becoming revealed and manifesting in a revealed way. So I would conclude and say that the Rebbe Rashab is coming to explain that even though Talmud is such a powerful level that reveals in the darkness such a deep, the Ayin that we learned about, but Mishnah still has something that the Talmud doesn't have. It has clarity for those that see the clarity. In other words, we don't skip Mishnah. We don't just say go from Mikra to Talmud. We have Mishnah because the Mishnah still carries the clarity that the Tanoim, Rabbeinu HaKadosh, Rav and Shmuel, Rabbi Yechanan, all received from Moshe Rabbeinu. So at the end of the day, mission is critical because you need to have gili. Now, he doesn't say it explicitly, but to me, it's pretty clear that's why he's all this whole elaboration to explain why do you need Mishnah once you have Talmud, Gemara. Because Mishnah has that element of gili. What can be confusing is that Talmud, many people would think, is even more gili than Mishnah. Because Talmud elaborates and brings it clear, even the Mishnah, it's still brief. But Talmud is not because it's bringing it the clarity, because Talmud is going into a dark place. That's the thing with Talmud. And Talmud is also revealing the Mishnah in the dark place. So at the end of the day, Talmud is more Cheshech and Bria, and Mishnah is Yetzirah and Gili. So it's a little twist that you have to add in understanding this, but that seems to be the Havana, the understanding of it. As I said, most people would think Mishnah is a level of Gili and Talmud is even more Gili. Like, almost like Mishnah should be in Bria and Talmud in Yetzirah, but that's not the way it's explained here. So that's why I'm focusing the clarity, the total clarity that Yetzirah has is the mile of Gili that comes from Zah of Atzilus. Whereas Talmud, Bria, is connected to Nihi. Needs further understanding anyway. But I finished the paragraph. Any questions?
Yeah, I don't understand how why Eitz HaChaim is in Bria and where it's a bitul l'makif. Wouldn't it make sense that Eitz HaChaim would only be in Atzilus? Because Bria is already a creation. It seems like that would be a more proper place for it to.
First of all, if the Rebbe Rashab says it's in Bria, it's in Bria. That's the fact.
Yeah, I understand that.
Asking me a question like that. I'm not. You want me to explain?
I'm just trying to. I'm just trying to understand it. I understand that he's a bittul, but then he says Eitz HaChaim is a bittul l'gabe amakif, and it would seem like that level.
So he compared. He said that Bria here he's comparing to Chachma, just as Chachma is the bittul to the makif of Keser, Bria is the bittul to the makif of Atzilus. That's what he said. Mm-hmm. But regarding the tree, yes. If you think of it practically, the tree of life is a creation in the Garden of Eden. Mm-hmm. And the Gan Eden is not in Atzilus. Gan Eden is in Bria. Gan Eden and Elyon. So technically speaking, it makes perfect sense because Eitz HaChaim in Atzilus, Gan Eden is in Bria. And Gan Eden Atachton is in Yetzirah or Asiyah. That's on a technical level. And the tree was a created tree. In Bria, it has that type of Gili. But he did compare. He said clearly that the level of Bria compared to the Ayin Eliki of Atzilus is like Chachma compared to the Ayin Eliki of Keser. On the top of the page, the third line. Yeah. That's what he said here. Yeah. One second.
And the fact that Eitz HaChaim it's Chaim Nitzchim. I know the Rebbe didn't speak about that specifically here, but it would seem like if you eat from the Eitz HaChaim, you can experience Chaim Nitzchim, which would seem to me you're able to accomplish that in the Olam HaBria? I thought you had to elevate to Olam Atzilus.
Why not?
Oh, okay. I thought you needed a higher.
Bria is I don't know if you know that Bria is quite a high level, by the way. It's not such a.
Okay.
It's Gan Eden Elyon. Most
got you.
neshamas don't even go there.
I got you.
It's quite a high level. I will just say this, that Eitz Hadas is where you have Misa comes into play. You mentioned Chaim Nitzchim.
Right.
Eitz Hadas, because Eitz Hadas has the Inikas HaChitzein, because that's what God wants. He wants it to come into a revealed state, which can be, unfortunately, misabused, as did happen when they ate from it, from the tree of knowledge. But that's where he wants it to be. He wants it to come in a revealed place, like Eitz Hadas, and indeed affected that the world would not have Chaim Nitzchim. And in that world, we have to now, through our Aveda, create Chaim Nitzchim. We have to bring godliness even into Yetzirah. What he says here into Zoh.
Oh, so even Chaim Nitzchim could be even in Yetzirah, not even Bria now even. So.
Well, what do you mean? When Mashiach comes, it'll be an Asiyah. No?
Right. Mm-hmm. But it always seems like we're trying to always align ourselves with Olam Asiyah with the Olam Atzilus, the Avos, for example. Ma'aseh Avos Simil Labanim. So I always thought we were trying to elevate this world to a level.
What's wrong? Or Asiyah with Bria too is also an achievement.
Or Asiyah, but Yetzirah, you said, right? Yetzirah also. Correct? Which is really
God created all these. Every world has this purpose. This is you're bringing things you know from other Maimorim into here. He's not discussing that here. Here he's discussing Bria, as in Eitz HaChaim. He said that similar to Chachma V'Atzilus compared to Keser, and then Yetzirah as Eitz Hadas. That's what he's discussing here, and it's perfectly fine to have Yetzirah and Asiyah, Yetzirah and Bria connecting to each other. That's the ultimate goal. You want to have both. The Chesed Gvura Mechusim and the Chesed Gvura Megulim. Now, both of them originate in Atzilus. He said clearly, the mides of Chesed Gvura to the chest is Yesod Abba, Yesod Ima, and then Zah becomes the fine midas in Atzilus as well. But then when it manifests in the world, it's Bria and Yetzirah.
Okay, that's good. Ad Chazeh, Chazeh. Okay.
Chazeh, yeah.
Square, thank you.
One minute. Any other questions?
Just one quick question, and I right after that section that you just cited in response to Eliezer's question, where it says this is the end of the sixth line on page 198. It keeps going on, but this is in Bria, and Bria is the beginning of Yeshus. So what's the inyan of having this this level of Chachma and Gvura, Chesed and Gvura, still in Mechusim, even though it's Mechinas Yesh, it's Yeshus. Do you understand the question?
No.
Oh, okay, that's a problem. As the Orloki is Mishtalshel from Atzilus into Biyah, my understanding is that that's the beginning of sort of Yeshus as we would relate to it.
Well, that's why I go up to line 6, and he says, "U'kamoy elam abriya." Read that line. "U'kamoy elam abriya shu hayesh harishin."
I'm sorry, which line?
5 lines from the top of the page.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Read the full line. Read the line.
Come on. Okay. Come on. Olam abriya shu hayesh harishon. Like I just said,
Continue reading the line. I asked you to read the full line till the end of the next line.
Hare meir sham gili ha'ayin. So it's not Eino.
So It's the first substance, but it's still not in a state
So
of
it's there,
yesh
but it's not
metzius.
there. Yeah, Sean, yesh arishin ve'eino b'chinas yesh metzius. It is a paradox.
Well, so what you're asking me how to explain the paradox?
Yeah, I guess I am.
So you go back to the page I shared with you the other day, page 1389, and he explained because the yesh, like for example, when a child is conceived, that first second, there's only one cell. Is that a yesh or not a yesh?
Uh-huh.
So compared to before, it's a yesh, but compared to a full-blown child, it's not yet a yesh. It's just a very amorphous, a one-cell nebula. And that's why it's still in a state of ayin mostly. It's only in Yetzirah
So
where
it partakes of both. It partakes of both. And because it's emerging from Yosod Imam Vaba, or it's emerging from Atzilus, it still
we learned this
partakes
at length, that when the seed, it's still in a seed form, in some ways, it's still considered a state of
partakes of the
ayin,
higher level.
relatively speaking, to Yetzirah.
Okay. It's a process. It's not like black or white.
Well, if you go back, those are the words that Rebbe Rashab said, that nothing happens quickly. It all is a process. These are exact words he used, actually. He said that. He said these words. I'm reading inside now. He says,
where?
Page 1389.
Oh.
All the questions, many of them, I think if you just go back, it's addressed. It's just that we moving maybe quickly here. He says, the savas hayeshu be'efen kazeh she'eina nasa mitchila b'bchinas yesh mamish. Rak tchilis savusei b'chinas chemer poshet. Dezer rak b'chinas afsharias hametzias. You see that? Loi b'chinas metzias mamish.
Where are you? I understand what you just. I understand what you. Oh, I see. I even have it specially highlighted. Okay.
Yeah, and there, not only that, he compared it to toihu, that it's still. You can't call it anything yet. It's still a somewhat of a perplexing state.
Got it.
Like you call it a baffling state. All you need is to use some of the examples I give. Don't try to understand it in the world of Bria. You're never going to understand it there. You have to find examples. I given at least 3-4 examples, maybe more. The conception of a child, the seed in the ground, the artist, when he begins to conceive of an idea before it becomes defined, you need to find an example that works for you. And then you'll find these stages as it develops, from Bria to Yetzirah to Asiyah. And Atzilus would be the state before that. That's really the only way to fully try to really get a handle on it.
Get your hands around it. Yeah, okay. Thank you. That was the answer to my question. I really appreciate it. I mean, yeah, we did go through. It's just a lot to absorb and process.
It's going to take many times. Let me tell you, I would probably predict that you probably need 10, 15 times to review it again and again before you really say, oh, okay, I got it.
Get it. Yeah. Thank you again, Rabbi, for your patience.
This is a perfect example. It begins more amorphous an idea until it's going to become more concrete in your mind.
Shkrach. You said it well.
Okay. So we're going to stop here. End of the paragraph on page 1398. And with this, he concludes the second level of Yetzirah, Mishnah, Gilui, the example of the luminous stone. As I said, it still needs some developing the connection to Mishnah, but there's no question that the point is that Gilui is critical here. You must have Gilui. You can't rely just on Helam. And the way the language is using here, that you need both, sounds to me like he's saying, why can't you have Talmud alone? You need also Mishnah. And why not Mishnah alone? You need Talmud. Each one adds something the other doesn't add. But it's still not it's not that simple, because in many ways you could say Mishnah is a deeper bittul than the bittul of Talmud, because it's closer to the source. And yet, in some ways, Talmud is Bria, which makes it higher than Mishnah because it's piercing the darkness. So I need still to work it out myself, to be honest, to really get both sides of it. being that the Rebbe Rashab doesn't spell it out, I would need to go back to page 1386, especially 1386. And I think a lot of it also lies in page 1388. I want to read those again before I can say anything more on this, because it's still confusing me a bit. So we'll stop here, end of paragraph, page 13.